Hi, this is Ed Driscoll, borrowing a used Apollo capsule and a spare Saturn rocket to make our way to Space Station 5. There we can report from a safe distance on the alien invasion that's about to impact planet Earth. Don't worry, there isn't a real invasion from outer space. But that isn't stopping Paul Krugman, the former Enron advisor turned New York Times blogger turned Nobel Economic Prize winner. Last year on CNN, Krugman told host Fareed Zakaria,
If we discovered that space aliens were planning to attack, and we needed a massive buildup to counter the space alien threat, and really inflation and budget deficits took secondary place to that, this slump would be over in 18 months. And then if we discovered, whoops, we made a mistake, there aren't actually any space aliens.
So we need Orson Welles, is what you're saying.
No, there was a Twilight Zone episode like this in which scientists fake an alien threat in order to achieve world peace. Well, this time we don't need it. We need it in order to get some fiscal stimulus.
And in May of this year, on Bill Maher's late-night comedy show, which airs on Time Warner CNN's HBO network, Krugman doubled down on his love of science fiction.
I actually have a serious proposal, which is that we have to get a bunch of scientists to tell us that we're facing a threatened alien invasion. And in order to be prepared for that alien invasion, we have to do things like build high-speed rail and then once we've recovered, we can say, whoops, there were no aliens. But look, I mean, whatever it takes, because right now we need somebody to spend, and that somebody has to be the U.S. government.
What Krugman is doing is taking ancient ideas from progressives of the first decades of the 20th century and reaching an absurdist point of view of interstellar heights. Back in 1906, progressive philosopher William James coined the phrase, the moral equivalent of war, as a way to justify all of the socialism his fellow self-described progressives of the era wished to inflict upon the rest of us. Pay no attention to the fact that it shares the same initials as meow, though it does seem like something Spector, Smersh, and Blofeld's cat would all approve, doesn't it? In the 1930s, economist John Maynard Keynes would lend further credence to these ideas by encouraging massive spending as a way to jumpstart an economy mired in depression. Those ideas didn't work in the 1930s, as this 2004 UCLA headline reminds us, which is why a 21st century Keynesian like Paul Krugman is forced to describe the destructive horrors of World War II as an economic miracle and call for alien invasion fantasies. But bad ideas die hard, and in 1977, Jimmy Carter dusted off the idea of a moral equivalent of war to justify his environmentalism.
Good evening. Tonight I want to have an unpleasant talk with you about a problem that's unprecedented in our history. With the exception of preventing war, this is the greatest challenge that our country will face during our lifetime. The energy crisis has not yet overwhelmed us, but it will if we do not act quickly. It's a problem that we will not be able to solve in the next few years, and it's likely to get progressively worse through the rest of this century. Our decision about energy will test the character of the American people and the ability of the President and the Congress to govern this nation. This difficult effort will be the moral equivalent of war, except that we will be uniting our efforts to build and not to destroy.
And similarly, in April of 2008, Time magazine would illustrate Carter's notion with this cover, which replaces the American flag the U.S. Marines hoisted atop Iwo Jima with a tree. And the headline, How to Win the War on Global Warming. As Thomas Sowell wrote a few years prior, intellectuals cannot operate at room temperature. There always has to be a crisis, some terrible reason why their superior wisdom and virtue must be imposed upon the unthinking masses. It doesn't matter what the crisis is. 100 years ago, it was eugenics. At the time of the first Earth Day a generation ago, the big scare was global cooling, a big ice age. They go from one to the other. It meets their psychological needs, and it gives them a reason for exercising their power. But with Solyndra and these other taxpayer sinkholes now seen as failed ventures, and with the idea of global warming having discredited itself during the infamous Hide the Decline scandal in 2009, and numerous doomsday final countdowns having come and gone and the Earth no worse for wear, we're left with Paul Krugman's Twilight Zone fantasies to sell the idea of massive government spending. Well, even more massive government spending than we're doing already. No wonder the president of Estonia took to Twitter in early June to decry Krugman's rhetorical nonsense. His country was occupied by both National Socialists, the Nazis, and International Socialists, the Soviet Union, during World War II, a war Krugman praised for jump-starting the world's economy. Which reminds me, unlike Paul, it's time for me to head back to planet Earth. But first I have to get through the Stargate and hopefully survive re-entry. And now you can safely say you've gone where Paul Krugman has gone before. For Silicon Graffiti, I'm Ed Driscoll. Live long, prosper, and to paraphrase Orson Welles after his radio production of The War of the Worlds frightened millions, don't believe everything you read in the New York Times.